First up is a new film called Poor Things, and it reunites a creative trio from The Favorite. So it's director Yorgos Lanthimos, who did Killing of a Sacred Deer and The Lobster, which are two films I greatly admire, writer Tony McNamara, who did The Favorite, and Emma Stone, who was in The Favorite. And this is one of those movies that has definitely stuck with me, especially this award season. I think in a similar vein to Saltburn, and not that it's exactly the same as Saltburn, but I think both of these movies have a unique perspective. They build a world. They have very distinct characters, which I like. I like all of those things. So it's a movie I've been thinking about since I have seen it. It also has some pretty outlandish things, much like Saltburn, in a slightly different vein. I think this is lighter than Saltburn ends up being, but again, like I said, if you've seen Yorgos Lanthimos' other films, you know he can be an odd guy, and this is no different. The premise is Emma Stone plays Bella Baxter, who is basically sort of a not Frankenstein's monster exactly, because she's just sort of one whole creature, but she is resurrected, and as a byproduct, starts out almost with the mind of a child and then in an adult's body, and quickly matures and wants to see the world. Willem Dafoe plays Dr. Goodwin Baxter, who is her father figure / creator. He's more sewn together than she is. He looks very Frankenstein's monster-y. But yeah, so she wants to explore the world, and the world that they've created here is semi-grounded in our world. There are cities that have the names of places we're familiar with, but they don't look like the actual cities. It's more fantastical. It's more sort of art directed, which I liked. There was a lot of like art deco-ness to a lot of it. So Emma Stone goes out to explore the world. She at one point pairs up with Mark Ruffalo's character, who is this sort of caddish dude, and I had seen Mark Ruffalo in All the Light We Cannot See, and he's doing a British accent or, a European accent there. And I was like, ooh, I don't know if Mark Ruffalo actually can pull that off, but he does a much better job here. It's also a much lighter role, and it's fun to see him sort of play this more ridiculous side. It's also got Christopher Abbott, Gerard Carmichael, Rami Youssef, who I would not have thought to cast Rami Youssef in a more serious role, but I actually think he does a really good job. It's got Margaret Qualley. I don't want to go too much into the details. I really like this film. It's pretty graphic in multiple ways. I will warn you in advance. There's just some gory stuff. There's a lot of nudity, like a whole lot of nudity. And I don't have a problem with nudity, but I do think at some points, both the sex and the nudity, I was like, I don't know if we're continuing to advance the story at this point, or if we have... they've already cycled through this and they've effectively shown what they needed to establish, and sometimes I'm sorry to say, I got Emma Stone's sex face in this gets recycled so many times. I was like, we don't need to see this again. It's the same shot. Like, I don't even know if you filmed something new here. But anyway, that's a minor point. It's a very distinct film. I enjoyed it. It's a little bit long. It's 2 hours and 21 minutes, but it felt like it moved pretty fast. I think there are a couple things they could have cut from it. Like, I don't have a problem with the sex and the nudity in it. I just think it became borderline gratuitous at a point. And, if it's not serving the story, like you've already done this, that's where you should shave from. But aside from that, it's a bizarre film. I do think there are some good emotional moments in it. But yeah, if you think you're game for it, very rated R, obviously. But if you think you're game for it, I think it's worth taking a gamble on. So Poor Things, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. The next film I have this week is called The Boy and the Heron and is the latest animated feature from Miyazaki. And I'm going to give a little caveat here. I saw the version with the Japanese voice acting, so I haven't seen the one with the English voice acting. And it's a pretty famous, English voice cast. You've got Christian Bale, Dave Bautista, Gemma Chan, Willem Dafoe again. It's a Willem Dafoe double feature this week. Karen Fukuhara, Mark Hamill, Robert Pattinson, Florence Pugh, Mamoudou Athie, Tony Revolori, and Dan Stevens. So I can't speak to that, but what I can speak to, and I've most of the Miyazaki films I watch, actually, I usually see the Japanese version first, so I'm just going to go based on that. It could be different and maybe easier to parse if it is in English and you're not reading the subtitles, but, I can't believe I'm saying this. I mean, Miyazaki is hands down one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. My apartment is decorated in just like a bunch of Studio Ghibli art, and I love his films. I think if it helps for context, some of my favorites are Howl's Moving Castle, Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away. I also have a soft spot for Ponyo just because I love the way they yell Ponyo in it. I know that's odd. So when you hear that Miyazaki is making a film that, all of his stuff feels very drawn from his life. And obviously, if you're familiar with his work, you know his relationship with his mother. And this story is about a young boy yearning for his mother. And then it gets into this whole fantastical world. When you tell me Miyazaki is making a film and he's like openly just being like, this is about my mother, I'm coming into it expecting to just bawl my eyes out and cry and be moved and all this stuff. That may have been on me, right? That may have been on me because I've cried during plenty of other Miyazaki films. So that might have been my own undoing here. So I'm going to warn you now, like, you know, and I think people have been taking different things away from it, which I will also acknowledge. Seeing a film is a very personal experience. So it's not a bad film. I want to be very clear about that. But I thought I was going to go into it and be like, this is going to wreck me as a person, which is what I wanted. And it didn't. Now, there are some fun, bizarre, you know, absurd things in it that I thought were really fun, but balance of that and the like sort of more serious contemplative moments, I don't know if it worked as well for me in this as it does with some of his other stuff. Also, the story here feels just a little bit more garbled than I'm used to with some of his other work. So it's not a bad experience at all, but I would say just temper your expectations. And, you know, to his own credit, he has sort of done this to himself where you hear Miyazaki and you're like, yes, this is going to be the greatest thing in the world. And this is a brilliant work of art from like, you know, a visual standpoint. The music is wonderful, but I just thought the story itself got a little meandering and lost. And also some of the elements of it that I'm not going to spoil, but got a little like weird, you know, and I maybe some of it was lost in translation. Maybe I need to rewatch it. But some of the like interpersonal family relation stuff, I was like, what's happening here? Are we effectively like what are we saying here? But I still think it's beautiful. I think if you're a Miyazaki fan, you're not going to not see this. You know, it's gorgeous. It's a little. Many of his films are like this. Some of it's a little more grotesque than some of the other stuff he's done, and a little less like artistically so. It's just like straight up grotesque. Ironically, in a similar vein to Poor Things, there are some grotesque things that happen. This isn't a spoiler either, but there's, you know, I love the way he draws like little old ladies, and sometimes I think he's shading his mom, but the second I saw that there was a pack of little old ladies in this, I was like, yes, give me this. And, you know, there's just the Heron character is drawn. The designs are fascinating. So the story is not his cleanest. The emotional beats as a byproduct of it, I also think are not necessarily the cleanest. It's still a beautiful film. If you are a fan, I think you will have a fine time, but just temper your expectations. And, you know, I sincerely hope it is not his last film, but I think there was some of that weight weighing on it when I was, you know, approaching this, and I thought maybe he was. And again, his self-proclaimed, like, it's, you know, semi-autobiographical, and it's about life and death and, you know, what is life? Yeah, so I'm still going to give it a 3.8 out of 5, but just I would temper your expectations going into it. If you have, like, a revelatory experience seeing it, I'm so happy for you. And maybe I need to rewatch it, like, a couple more times in order to really have it sink in. But, yes, still a 3.8 out of 5 for The Boy and the Heron. The last thing I have this week, and I have to give a shout out to my friend Rebecca for suggesting this to me. It's called The Garden, Commune, or Cult. And if you've listened to the roundtable episodes of this, you know that we just watched Love Has Won, The Cult of Mother God. So kind of on a little bit of a cultish kick. But yes, so this is a 6-part series, and it's on Max, or possibly the Discovery Channel, but I watched it on Max. They're all about like 45, 50 minutes. And it is about a group called The Garden, which I was completely unfamiliar with. They went viral on TikTok, I think especially in like 2020, for being like, yeah, we're open doors. We're very, you know, receiving of people. And there were 2 particular figures who, you know, were the faces of it on TikTok. And so this documentary follows a couple people. And then there was some drama, you know, that played out very visibly. They got accused of being a cult. This takes place as they are trying to sort of wash themselves of that misconception. And so they invite a camera crew to document them. And their process for inviting new members is like you get a 10-day trial period, and then, you know, you have to vote people in, or everyone has to vote you in unanimously, and like all of their decisions are unanimous. So it's pretty fascinating. I think Love Has Won, The Cult of Mother God did a slightly better job of presenting like multiple sides of the story, whereas I will warn you that The Garden, like, I don't know, it doesn't come in necessarily with a judgmental perspective, but I didn't feel like it was able to get as many participants to, but, you know, you get to see the people who are actively in this, we'll call it community for now, because they use that word a lot, but you don't necessarily get to hear as directly from the people who've made the accusations or, you know, lived through whatever this tumultuous time was. So I don't know if this is the only season. I actually I'm fascinated by it. It also, I almost felt like it was cast as a reality show. I don't think that's actually the case, but, you know, some of these people who are coming in, I was like, you could not have picked, you know, if I was casting like a Survivor meets Go Live in a Commune, I would definitely pick some of them. And because there is this voting element and, you know, there's a sort of social game to it, and if people don't like you, all this stuff, it feels like Survivor in the middle of, you know, the woods in Missouri or whatever. So If you like this type of thing, I recommend The Garden, Commune, or Cult. If you are not into this type of show, like, I don't blame you. I know it's a guilty pleasure of mine. But yeah, if you're looking for something, especially if after having watched Love Is One, but this isn't as well put together, I think. Love Is One, I think, was a really tight, like, you know, it just kept getting more and more absurd. This one, similarly to actually Poor Things in a way, like, kind of gets a little repetitive for certain things. So throwing that out there, if this is your type of jam, I think this is worth checking out.